how the Germans could have stopped D-Day and defeated the Allies. A hypothetical analysis. The Allied invasion of Normandy on June 6, 1944, known as D-Day, was a turning point in World War I. The Suezvolkage of Allied forces marched the Begendisch of the Enge vor Nazi Germany. However, what if the Germans had been better prepared? Could they have stopped the D-Day landings and turned the tide of the war? In this hypothetical scenario, we explore how a series of strategic decisions and changes in German leadership might have altered the outcome of one of the most significant battles in history. Improved intelligence and deception detection. One of the critical factors in the success of D-Day was the Allies' ability to deceive the Germans about the true location of the invasion. Operation Fortitude, the Allied deception plan, convinced the Germans that the main invasion would occur at Pas-de-Calais rather than Normandy. To counter this, the Germans could have focused on improving their intelligence gathering and analysis capabilities. In this scenario, let's assume that the Germans developed a more sophisticated intelligence network capable of detecting Allied deception efforts. By intercepting and correctly interpreting key communications, they could have identified Normandy as the actual invasion site. With this knowledge, they could have repositioned their forces more effectively, concentrating their defenses where they were most needed. Centralized command and control. One of the significant weaknesses of the German defense on D-Day was the fragmented and rigid command structure. Adolf Hitler, who had the final say on the deployment of critical reserves like the panzer divisions, was hesitant to act decisively. In this hypothetical scenario, let's imagine that Hitler granted greater autonomy to his field commanders, particularly Erwin Rommel and Gerd von Rundstedt, allowing them to respond more quickly and flexibly to the invasion. If Rommel had been given full control of the panzer divisions, he could have mobilized them much earlier on June 6th, deploying them to the beaches of Normandy before the Allies could establish a secure foothold. A coordinated and rapid counterattack by these armored units might have overwhelmed the initial waves of Allied forces, potentially pushing them back into the sea. Reinforced Atlantic Wall. The Atlantic Wall, the German coastal defense line, was formidable but incomplete by the time of the D-Day invasion. Rommel had pushed for more extensive fortifications along the Normandy coast, but due to resource constraints and competing priorities, these efforts were not fully realized. In this scenario, let's assume that the German High Command prioritized the completion of the Atlantic Wall in Normandy. By diverting more resources to the construction of bunkers, minefields, and anti-tank obstacles, the Germans could have created a virtually impregnable defense along the beaches. Additionally, Rommel's proposal to flood the coastal plains and create additional obstacles for paratroopers could have been fully implemented, further hindering the Allied advance. Better utilization of Luftwaffe and Kriegsmarine. The Luftwaffe, German Air Force, and Kriegsmarine, German Navy, played relatively minor roles in the defense of Normandy due to the Allies' overwhelming air and naval superiority. However, in this hypothetical scenario, the Germans could have adopted different strategies to maximize the effectiveness of their limited resources. If the Luftwaffe had concentrated on night operations and surprise raids on Allied supply ships and transport convoys, they could have disrupted the flow of reinforcements and supplies to the beaches. Similarly, if the Kriegsmarine had employed more aggressive tactics, such as deploying U-boats and fast attack craft to harass Allied landing ships and bombardment vessels, they might have inflicted heavier casualties and delayed the landings. Strategic use of reserve forces. The German High Command held back significant reserve forces, partly due to uncertainty about where the main Allied invasion would occur. In this scenario, let's assume that the Germans, with better intelligence and a more flexible command structure, were able to commit these reserves more effectively. By rapidly deploying reserve divisions to reinforce key defensive positions in Normandy, the Germans could have created a more robust and dynamic defense. These reserves could have been used to launch counterattacks, disrupt Allied supply lines, and reinforce crumbling sections of the front. A more aggressive use of reserves might have bogged down the Allied advance, buying the Germans critical time to regroup and launch a larger counteroffensive. Decisive leadership and morale. Leadership and morale were crucial factors in the outcome of D-Day. In reality, the German leadership was often indecisive, and the morale of some troops was already waning by mid-1944. In this hypothetical scenario, imagine a German command structure with more decisive and charismatic leaders who could inspire their troops to fight with greater determination. For example, if Rommel had been able to maintain consistent communication with his units and personnel, oversee the defense, his presence might have bolstered the morale of the German defenders. A more motivated and determined German army could have resisted the Allied assault more effectively, turning the beaches of Normandy into a grinding battle of attrition that the Allies might not have been able to sustain. Conclusion: a hypothetical turning of the tide. While it's impossible to know for certain how these hypothetical changes would have played out, it's clear that the Germans had the potential to mount a more formidable defense on D-Day. With better intelligence, more flexible command structures, improved fortifications, and a more aggressive use of their limited resources, the Germans could have significantly increased the challenges faced by the Allied invasion forces. Had the Germans been able to stop or even significantly delay the D-Day landings, the course of World War II might have been altered dramatically. The Allied advance into Western Europe could have been stalled, giving the Germans time to reinforce their positions, redeploy troops from other fronts, and perhaps even negotiate a more favorable peace settlement. However, history shows that the Allies' planning, deception, and sheer determination ultimately overcame the German defenses, leading to the liberation of Western Europe and the eventual defeat of Nazi Germany.